Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Human Engineering. It's Tim Braun here with Dr. Terry Lyles. Today, we're going to talk about preparedness and how you can engineer yourself, with our theme of human engineering here for anything that might come along. And as we all know, the last 2 years have been a little bit of a challenge. But even when there's not a national or a worldwide challenge like the pandemic or other huge events of the past 20 plus years that Terry has had some intimate experience with, and we'll talk about that today. Planning for events that could be catastrophic in your business and preparing yourself to handle those. I think Terry will explain how you can actually come out better on the other side of that if you're prepared and handle it the right way. So let's just jump right in. One of the things I suppose we should mention our sponsors. Yes. So our podcast is sponsored by Curable Premium CBD. You can go to their website at kuribl.com. And our other sponsor is E7. Terry, what's the website for E7?
ESVYN.com. Well, I told you we're going to have Marsha on at some point to explain that.
Yeah, where's Marsha?
Yeah, she's around. We'll grab her one day. We'll let her take this from you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so it's a clothing development line that we are also using hemp, which is antimicrobial, antibacterial, which actually really sparked just before Corona. So we're making a lot of headway there because, not just from the fashion side, but also from the health side of clothing.
Right. So let's jump into this. So, right before the pandemic, I think we'd all agree that the world was moving along pretty good. People's businesses were good. Life in general had really hit a new high point, I think, for most people. And being a business person, you are too, I think we tend to focus on things that affect our businesses. And nobody could have thought, I think in their wildest dreams, what happened with the pandemic, with the shutdowns and all the things. And I think there's some businesses that came out stronger. Unfortunately, I think in some cases, the shutdowns put some businesses in a premium position, companies like Amazon, all of a sudden, it was really good for them without them having to do anything.
Right.
Other businesses, restaurants, and those had to completely readjust their business. And I know in some cases with some of the restaurant owners I know, they've adopted the new model of the takeout model and the delivery model. And, even though things are kind of getting back to normal, I guess with the mask mandate going away yesterday for airlines and other forms of travel.
I just traveled to LA the other day, so I can't wait. I almost got it, but I didn't make it. Had to wear a mask.
Right. So Terry, you're the expert on this. You've been involved, you got us through the pandemic, you got us through the tsunami, you got us through 9/11.
Yeah.
Tell us how we prepare for these things.
Well, I would start with your last, which was, September 11th, was just a normal day until a plane hit, the North Tower, South Tower, and then the world slowed down and then stopped, especially if you were in that 16 square block area of, lower Manhattan. So it was a local tragedy. And, I spent over 3 months going back and forth from South Florida to New York. Morgan Stanley was one of my clients at the time and, had thousands of people in the North Tower going in and out every day. I've been there. I was actually scheduled to be there 2 days after 9/11, which would have been the 13th. I was getting on an airplane in Lauderdale, heading to Detroit for Chrysler, and then heading over to Morgan Stanley. And I could have been in the building. I could have been at the airport. Didn't happen. But what we found out about lack of preparedness at 9/11, and if you remember back, 20 years go by pretty quickly for guys like you and I. But when you really think back, there was no Homeland Security. So when we got there, Port Authority, fire rescue, police departments, the mayor's office, They were all saying similar but not different things necessarily, but they weren't set up on the same communique. So everybody was getting different messaging and everybody was working in silos. The good that came out of that lack of preparedness was that we created Homeland Security. And it took a while, but it got created because they realized communication is the first piece of effective preparation. So if you want to be prepared, you have to have clear comms. If communications go down, you better have a very strong secondary protocol, which military ops is what we train on, can do that. They use different systems to do that, but communication is key. Communication at 9/11 on that day was horrible. And we learned a valuable lesson as a country. So with the pandemic, it almost happened again because we just didn't know about a pandemic. You know, it's been over 100 years since we faced anything close to this, and probably not at this magnitude. And this was global. So what we found out is that the whole world doesn't communicate together, not just 16 square blocks of, you know, what we knew then 20 years ago. The whole world was trying to figure out messaging. So preparedness starts with clear and consistent communication.
Great. So how do we take that and apply it to ourselves, whether it's our businesses or just everyday life? You know, I don't think anybody thought any of those three events that we just talked about could have happened, or they were, I mean, maybe they thought they might happen, but you didn't expect it to happen when it did. And nobody's really prepared for those things. So on a personal level, how do you, I mean, we talk about communication and what came out of 9/11, but how do you prepare yourself for your whole life to change dramatically overnight?
I mean, you can't totally prepare, but you know, it's a military conversation and training. Prepare for the worst and expect the best.
Right.
Navy SEALs do this. We worked with Navy SEALs for years, and they carry extra engines with them for rafts. You know, I mean, you're like, why would you? Because what if there's 7 of us guys out there? We're blowing through the water in the middle of the night in the dark, going to hit a target, come back. What if your boat doesn't work? You go to the second boat. We saw this on the extraction of, you know, bin Laden. And we sent in choppers and one went down. They blew it up and came home on other choppers. You know, I mean, the military trained for the worst. They literally train for the worst, but they still expect the best. I think the average company, individual, and family makes preparation. Look, we all have insurances, auto insurance, health insurance, life insurance. We all have insurances, right? That is preparedness. But it doesn't mean you're going to actually know how you're going to respond when an event happens. Those are just parachutes. It doesn't tell you where you're going to land. You have no idea where you're landing because the ground below you may be unfamiliar to you. You know, you don't, flying in an aircraft, you could end up crossing over cities and even countries very quickly and end up in enemy territory, but the parachute helps you land. So preparedness is a parachute. The deeper preparedness is when I hit the ground, how do I navigate to health and safety, regardless of where I land? And I think Corona taught us all, we had a parachute, but we didn't know where it was going. And you don't always know in a crisis where you're going. You just have to know how to navigate through it.
Well, and I think, you know, the other thing I think about as we're talking about this is a balance. And what I mean by that is, you know, is it possible to be over prepared and be too focused on what might happen? And that takes you away from just operating on a daily basis. And then, you know, so that's one piece. You know, how do we handle that balance of being prepared, preparing for the worst, expecting the best, but not going so far that you're focused, you're over prepared and you're waiting for something and not living your life. And then, you know, I think the deeper thing I want to get into is, and this goes back to the human engineering and the training part that we've talked about, is I think that if you're trained properly for that, no matter what comes up, you handle it I don't want to say with ease, but it's all in the course of things. I
Yes.
know that, when the pandemic hit, I think I was more angry than I was worried about what was going to happen.
Right.
I was angry that why is this all happening? But I wasn't worried about how I was going to deal with it because I've been with you for 20 years, working through
Yeah.
different stressful events and different big events, whether it's in my personal life or in business. And so how do we get to that training point where, the mild irritations during the day, you deal with them the same way the big ones come along? Because I think that's where what we're trying to get to with the human engineering is I
Sure.
think there's a balance, but then it's, like when I played baseball, take ground balls for an hour at a time. So you got to the point where it was just automatic. You didn't
Yeah.
even think about it.
Right.
And that's, I think, where the people you coach, and I know myself, I think I've gotten to a place where when something catastrophic happens, I don't react like, oh my God, it's the end of the world.
Right.
My mind right away goes to, okay, how do I deal with this? What's the next piece? Let's go toward it. Let's handle this.
Yeah, I think to your first point, can you be over prepared? I don't know. I'd like to say probably not. I mean, obviously you can be, prepared. I think what you're really trying to ask is if I'm over prepared and focused on the wrong side of that coin, this is
Right.
going to happen today. This could happen. This could happen. Yes, that can cause anxiety. Yes, that can cause emotional stress and physical stress. But typically the way that training works is, in the human engineering side, is if you're well prepared, you don't have to think about that. Because if it happens, you go plan A, plan B, plan C, you just start pushing buttons. So proper preparedness is preparing, locking the button down, and then go about your normal day. I mean, like in my house here, we've got food and water for a year, and that's just on a normal basis. And we do that for a reason, because you just don't know what will happen. What if the water's shut down? What if the grocery lines, as we now are finding out a year later,
Right.
with food, shortages and supply chain and fuel cost? And listen, as long as listen, I don't have to leave my house for a long time to go find water. Okay.
Right.
So I don't think about water. You know what I'm saying? So if they
Right.
shut my water off and I have no water, I'm not freaked out about that. So preparedness is about stock up, prepare for whatever that could be, emotionally, physically, mentally, and then go about your daily life. And then if something happens, you know where the war room is. You know who to call in danger. You know what you need to do next. That's that military preparation, I think, that is so different, because if you're not prepared and something happens, and listen, I live in South Florida. I've lived here for 2 decades. They give a hurricane warning, shelves are empty. Gas
Right.
lines for miles.
Right.
Because people weren't prepared.
Right.
Call preparation.
Right. Well, and I think, now that I listen to you on that, I think the key is, I think where I was going with that over preparedness is, like you said, the anxiety and stress about, instead of being focused on the fact you're prepared now, being focused on, okay, I'm prepared, but what's going to happen next? And am I going to be okay? And is this going to,
Sure.
that's, I think, where I was going with that. But I think, as you were talking about that, just the fact that if you are prepared, then like you said, I mean, you made it real clear on the water, it's not something to worry about. So it's behind you, you're not focused on it. Something happens. Yeah, I got water, so.
Well, in racing, if I'm the driver and something happens to my car, I'm not going to pull over and fix it myself.
Right.
I get on the radio, talk to my crew chief, and the crew chief is listening as the crew members are listening. There's 5 other engineers in the box in the pit. They've already figured out a potential solution. How do you do that in 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes? Because they have protocols.
Right.
If this happens, we do that. If that happens, we do this. They have a whole strategy. They make decisions like this, just like on a football field, a soccer field. You have to have third and four, what do we do?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and if you have that, that's preparedness. That gives you a better chance to make a better decision when that time comes.
Right. So Terry, I know you've got a lot of tools that are available to people, whether it's your books and some downloadable, guides and those types of things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of those things?
Yeah, if they go to my website, terrylyles.com, TERRYLYLES.com, we have 3 different giveaways that are 30-page each. And it's great information. My publisher and I have worked this out years ago. They're nice enough to work with me on this, and we give these away for free. They're free PDF downloads. So terrylyles.com, and for the sake of this conversation, it's navigating normalcy in the midst of a pandemic, which is the coronavirus. So you can go to my website, download that PDF. It's absolutely free. You can ship it to other people, as many people as you want. That's fine. That's why we do it. So these are the resources we have. Obviously, my book and other videos and resources are there. But for sake of this conversation, that's a free PDF download at terrylyles.com. And it supports, it's 30 pages of information. It's really good information on what do you do before, during, and after a crisis, and how do you navigate that correctly to get through it stronger versus weaker.
And on your YouTube channel, do you have any specific videos that might help them with this?
Yeah,
Or is that-
I have an entire series on my YouTube channel, which is just, if you just go to, YouTube and go to Terry Lyles, you'll pop up, please like and share. And then there's a whole coronavirus step-by-step process that we did early on in Corona, but it's so interesting. I've got great producers around me. I mean, these people are smart, and they're like, hey, let's think a year down the road as we're videoing this. And not knowing how bad this pandemic would be, little know 2 years later, we're still navigating, like with masks and other things. Do you, don't you? So those are all just downloadable. They're on video there on the YouTube channel, so you can go there. They're also on my website. So yeah, there's a lot of free resources that we try to work to give back to people.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time today, Terry. Thanks for, being part of our human engineering podcast here. We'll be back again next week. And again, don't forget to check out our sponsors, Curable Premium CBD. And you can check them out at KURIBL.com, and E7, which is ESVYN.com, right, Terry?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Well, till next week, Tim Braun and Dr. Terry Lyles.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.